Alright, so here we have same front foot lengths that we had before. We're looking at the same tracks, 2.25, 2.35, and 2.4. We want to know what percentile these fall into. Alright, so the first thing we need to know is the number of scores less than 2.25. So we look at our list. This is from smallest to largest. How many scores are less than 2.25 on this? 1. That's it. It's the only one that's less than 2.25. So 1 score is less than 2.25. What's the total number of scores? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 total. So to figure out what percentile it is, we take 1, divide it by 10, and multiply it by 100. That is the 10th in the 10th percentile, which means 10% of the tracks are less than it. Which makes sense, right? There's 1 out of 10 tracks that are less than it, that's 10%. So obviously, because there's 10 scores, we can easily figure this out in our heads without even doing the math. But I wanted to show you, I left this as 10 so you can see it both with the math and without the math. All right, the next one, 2.35. How many scores are less than 2.35? Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 scores are less than 2.35. We have a total of 10 scores. 5 divided by 10 times 100 is 50. So the 50th percentile, that means 50% of the scores are less than it, which makes sense. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of 10. It's 50%. Okay, notice I've only been talking about less than, not greater than. I didn't say 50% are less than and 50% are greater than, because you can't say that. A percentile is only telling us the percentage of scores that are less than it. And here's an example of why that is. So 2.4. How many scores are less than 2.4? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 scores are less than it. 8 divided by 10 times 100, this is the 80th percentile. It means 80% of the scores are less than it. Are 20% greater? No, there's not a single number greater, because these are all the same. Now, there's always a student that's like, well, it's 20% are greater than or equal to. That's true, but that tells us nothing. I tell you what, how about on your next exam, I write on your exam, you got an 85 or a 40. Well, how do I know? I don't know, it's one or the other, right? So the or doesn't help us. So that's why we never care about if it's larger or equal to, because it doesn't tell us anything. It could all be equal to, it could all be greater than, we don't know. So all that we care about for percentiles, deciles, and quartiles is the percentage less than. That's all that's relevant for this. The percentage of scores that are less than. All right, so that is a type 1 question. Very straightforward. Usually no one has any difficulties with these. I'm not saying if you have difficulty with it, not to come up for help or not to email me or whatever, but usually if you take a look at it, you can figure this out. This is not that difficult. The next type is question 2. Now, a lot of times people do these incorrectly, not because it's difficult, but because this question is a 2-step process. We're going to calculate this letter L first, then we're going to do something with it. A lot of times, people will calculate L and think that's their answer. That is not your answer. That is what you're going to use to figure out what the X value is. So for this type 2 question, we have a percentile. We want to figure out the exact value of X for that percentile. All right. So we're going to first calculate the locator. We're going to take our percentile. Let's say we're looking for P20, the 20th percentile. So that would be 20 divided by 100, which is 0.2, times, in the case of our data we just had, 10, which would be 2. So the exact, that's the locator. That's not the exact value of X. A lot of people just say, oh, I got it, and then they say 2 is the answer. 2 is my locator. Once I have that, then I have to ask this question. Is it a whole number Yes, 2 is a whole number. So then I'm going to do this, which I'll explain in just a second. Or if I had gotten 2.1, that's not a whole number, then I will do this. All right, I'm going to move ahead to the example, and then we're going to come back and talk about what these two things mean. All right, so we have the same red box tracks. We want P40 and P75. That's what we're looking for, the exact value of x for those percentiles. Okay, so K is 40, that's the percentile we're looking for. N is the number of scores we have. We still have 10 scores. So 40 divided by 100 times 10 is 4. That's my locator. That is a whole number. So what it says to do then is this. If L is a whole number, we're going to find the Lth score, which is the 4th score in the list. We're going to add it to the 5th score, and then we're going to divide by 2. So, the 4th score, we just count. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the 4th score. This is the 5th score. But they're the same number. It doesn't matter. Don't be like, oh, I need the next highest score. You don't. You just need 1, 2, 3, 4. The 4th score is 2.3. The 5th score is 2.3. You add them together. You divide by 2. And therefore, my answer is 2.3. So my answer is 2.3. This is the exact value of the 40th percentile. All right, so P75. K is 75, N is 10. So 75 divided by 100 times 10 is 7.5. That is not a whole number. So it tells us this. If it's not a whole number, round L up to the next highest whole number. You round it completely up to the next highest whole number. So we're going to just round that up to the very top. So 7.5 rounded up becomes 8. So now all we do is we find the 8th score. So we just count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. My 8th score is 2.35. All right. There are 2 times in this class throughout the semester that you are always going to round up no matter what to a whole number. This is one of them. The rest of the time you follow normal rounding rules. You don't have to round to a whole number or anything. But this is one of those times to always round up. So I have a short story that it's a little gruesome, so be forewarned. It might be like PG-13 or something. So, but you'll never forget to round up after you hear this. So back in the days of the samurai in Japan, when someone was convicted of a crime, almost all the time they'd be executed. They'd be put to death. And the way that happened is the samurai would actually kill them with their sword, with their sword. So someone was convicted of doing something wrong. They were brought in. They were said, you're executed. You're going to be executed for this. There would be a samurai whose job would be to kill the person. Well, so, people are doing this. It's just like a job, right? Imagine that you are going out for your daily job. It's a daily grind. And so the poor samurai that has to do this is like, there's got to be something better. So he thinks, I could practice my different cuts instead of just, killing the person. So they came up with these creative ways of tying the criminal in different positions so they could practice different cuts. So like if they wanted to practice cutting from here all the way through to the top of their armpit, they would tie the head over and tie the arm out so they could practice that cut. So, they're getting practice out of it, right? There are scrolls with illustrations of all these different tying methods to tie the criminals up so they could practice different cuts. So time goes by. And as humans, we tend to be especially those of you who are on sport teams, we tend to be competitive, right? So one day, one samurai's like, huh, I'm better at this than you are, and the other samurai's like, no, you're not. So